when we start speaking. I can see that we are now live. So I'll be doing our opening introductions for the day shortly. All right, good day, everyone. I was just waiting to see if we'll have any further trickle-ins, but I think we've reached a quorum and I think we can proceed. So as a start to our day, my name is Ramatulai Jallo. I'm a student for the Human Rights and Democratization Program. And first of all, I'd like to introduce the team that has assisted in coordinating this event. This event is basically a joint collaboration between the Women's Rights Unit and the Disability Rights Unit. And basically just to recognize that this has been put together by Roses from the Women's Rights Clinic. It's also been put together by Kwame Andrew Duclos from the Disability Unit and Benedict Washira from the Disability Unit as well. So firstly, to warmly thank you for joining us today. In spite of our busy schedules and in spite of everything that is going on, we really appreciate you taking the time to attend this event. And just to let you know that as we all already know, this is an advocacy meeting where our agenda for the day will basically be around the ratification of the two key protocols to the African Charter on Human and People's Rights. And these two key protocols are the Protocol on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities and the Protocol on the Rights of Older Persons in Africa. So the aim of this meeting is basically to bring together key members of the governments of Kenya, of Ghana, of South Africa, and also key members of the civil society organization, academia, to basically share the challenges that have been faced in terms of the ratification of these two key protocols. And we aim for this meeting not to be the last meeting, but for it to be the beginning of a great relationship between all of these key stakeholders. And I would like to recognize that time is not on our side. So I would like just to ask that you bear with me as I try and manage the time. We have a jam-packed schedule, and I'm sure we're really excited to get into the gist of what we will be talking about today. Just as a unfortunate change to our program. We were notified this morning that the minister unfortunately will not be able to join us. And this is the Deputy Minister of Social Development, Mrs. Bogopane Zulu. So she's indicated that unfortunately she won't be able to join us, but it doesn't mean that we will not have a productive meeting. We have key members of the different countries that we have represented here today. So I think that it will be a fruitful discussion. Before I hand over to our first speaker, I would just like to note our key speakers for the day. First of all, we have Professor Frans van Loon, and he's the director for the Center for Human Rights here in the University of Pretoria. He's a renowned academic in the field of human rights in Africa. And I'd also like to recognize the presence of Honorable Priscilla Nyokabi. She's a commissioner with the National Gender and Equality Commission in Kenya as well. I would also like to touch on the representation of Help Age International, Ms. Rosaline Kihumba, and also Chief State Advocate Pacharo. We also have Esther Jamfi, who's the Executive Secretary for the National Council for Persons with Disabilities, Mr. Dube, who's also representing the African Disability Alliance. We have Rita Kusi as well. We have the Honorable Ole Sankok, who is part of the Senate for Kenya. And we also have Honorable Isaac from the National Assembly from Kenya as well. We are also joined by Jackson Agufana, who is the lead for Kenya Union of the Blind. We have Rudolph K, who's the national coordinator for the South African Older Persons Forum. And we have Oluwatomi, who is the project manager and vice president strategy and growth for Akin Fade Foundation. And we hope to also be joined by Nkoko Bule, who is the director of the Sabukeng Old Age Homes. And we will be concluding with our project officer for the Women's Rights Unit, academic tutor as well, and LLD candidate, Susan Mutembasere. So with that, that would be our program and the brief introductions. As we're fighting with time, I will leave the floor and I will then hand over to our first speaker for the day, who will be Professor Frans van Loon. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, moderator, and thank you for the opportunity. And may I just also add my voice of welcome and thanks to our guests. I will not go down the list again, if you forgive me, but I think we have two categories essentially here: members of parliament, honorable members of parliament from the various parliaments. You're very welcome. We really appreciate you sacrificing, giving up your time, but also making yourself part of this coalition that really tries to achieve something very particular, as we will talk about today. The other broad group would be civil society organizations, leaders really essentially, and people who are eager to play an active role in this campaign. And then I suppose we have the academic kind of contingent, but those academics are also, I think, civil society organization people. I want to just extend a specific word of welcome to Pacharo Kahira, our good friend from Malawi, who is not one of the targeted countries, but will also share experience here with us today. Let me briefly say why the Center for Human Rights is kind of spearheading this. As I think many of you may know, the Center for Human Rights here at the University of Pretoria is, on the one hand, an academic department. So our students in the Human Rights and Democratization in Africa program are the ones who are also involved in this in terms of the advocacy of this endeavor. We thank them. And that is part of what we try to do. Also train, get ready a new generation of lawyers and human rights professionals. On the other hand, the center is also, if you like, more of a civil society organization itself. And in that context, we advocate for human rights more broadly in the African continent, but focusing on the rights of those most marginalized. For us, then, that would certainly include women and persons with disabilities. So you heard from the moderator that the two units in the center that are involved today is the Disability Rights Unit and the Women's Rights Unit. And just maybe a word around women's rights, because the two protocols, as we have indicated, are the protocols on the rights of persons with disabilities and older persons. But we come as a center to the older persons protocol from the realization that being older and the effect that it has certainly been feminized, has certainly a gender specific resonances. Well, everywhere, but particularly in Africa. So we focus, in a sense, we bring our concerns and our focus to the protocol and its ratification from the perspective of gender. So thank you to everyone in the center for making this event possible and for driving this campaign. And thank you once again to everyone who is here with us today. Let me say very briefly, to complement what the moderator said, yes, we are here to try to put our thoughts together around the process of the ratification of two protocols to the African Charter. They were adopted in, as I think all know, in 2016 for the protocol on older persons and in 2018 for the protocol on persons with disabilities. Time is ticking, and we have seen that there hasn't really been a rush towards ratification by our states. The African Union adopted these protocols, but only 15 ratifications is required per protocol for each of these protocols. Up to today, for the older persons protocol, we know that there are only 4. For the disability rights protocol, there are none. Now, to accelerate this process, we thought to target 3 countries that really are leading democracies in Africa. One from Southern Africa, where we are, South Africa, one from East Africa, Kenya, and one from West Africa, Ghana. And we want to, in a sense, try to invigorate or reinvigorate, I think, many of our efforts to work towards the ratification of the protocol in and by these 3 countries. Let us also note that in terms of the older person protocol, that it has been signed at least by Ghana, but South Africa and Kenya has not even signed the older persons protocol. And we know that signature is not in itself an internationally binding moment, but it is certainly an indication of a process. And as far as the disability rights protocol is concerned, South Africa at least has signed, but the other two states have not. So the purpose of the exercise, I think, is to raise awareness and understanding of the value that these protocols can add, and to give us arguments, if you like. But on the other hand, also, for those of us who really already are engaged, and there are many of us that have already worked on the process of advancing ratification, we hope that we can share ideas, share experiences, share strategies. What have we done, had worked, and what can we do better, so that as we go along in this campaign, we all remain committed and we keep on looking over each other's shoulders and adding value by sharing and looking out for what is most effective within the context in which we find ourselves. So we thought this is a good idea to at least bring these 3 states together, representatives from government, from parliament, from civil society. Let us form this collective coalition, and let today be a mark in that process that will see the speedy ratification by at least 15 states and the entry into force of these 2 protocols. We know that entry into force of a protocol is not a panacea. It doesn't mean that rights are realized, but we could say that the ratification and entry into force are necessary conditions. They are not sufficient, but they do represent a symbolic moment, a line in the sand, and the start of effective domestication. So once again, I implore you to be as much part of this day and the discussion as you possibly can. Let us all share what we can. Let us leave these few hours together with a sense of purpose and a sense of having added thinking and strategies to our arsenal to get the job done. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Professor, for those words, and especially on highlighting the fact that we do not have much time in terms of the ratification of these key protocols. So I hope that the discussions that we have today will be productive. And at this point, I'd like to hand over to our Honorable Commissioner, Priscilla Nyokabi. And as touched on in the introductions, Priscilla Nyokabi, Honorable Priscilla Nyokabi, is a commissioner for the National Gender and Equality Commission in Kenya. And she is also a renowned human rights attorney, both in Kenya and also the continent. So Honorable Nyokabi, I invite you to the floor, and thank you so much for gracing our occasion.
Thank you so much for this invitation and for the conversation that we are having. And thank you also to see all of the participants and also our Member of Parliament, Honorable Sangok. Thank you very much. Truly happy to be here with this conversation. And I put together some talking notes that I just want to go through. And very happy with the selection of the 3 countries, just speaking from the last speaker on Kenya, South Africa, and Ghana. And I remember the efforts that there were for the Maputo Protocol. So I think a similar effort in terms of getting the 2 protocols signed and ratified by the 3 states, but also by many of the African states, and to attain the number of 15 required to enter into force. I'm happy with the challenge. My own commission is the leading state agency. We are a National Human Rights Institute under the Bill of Rights chapter in the Kenyan Constitution, Chapter 4 and Article 59. And we are tasked with being the lead agent in terms of pushing the state to adopt international and African conventions and protocols like the ones we are discussing. And so this falls within our mandate. We are also the commission that looks after the special interest groups. And the special interest groups here for us and for our constitution include the women, the youth, the children, the persons with disability, the older members of society, and also the minorities and marginalized. So both the older members of society and the persons living with disability fall under the mandate of our commission as far as protecting their human rights and protecting them from discrimination is concerned. I'm also happy that the 2 persons with disability and older members of society fall in the same ministry, under the Ministry of Social Welfare or Social Protection, as we call it here. We call it the Ministry of Labor and Social Protection. And we have a very good working relationship with the minister. We call him Cabinet Minister Chelugui. And so we will bring to his attention the conversation. And we have already done, but we will accelerate the efforts around getting Kenya to follow up with the ratification and the signing. Allow me to stop the video so that I can go through the remarks that I did just on the presentation that I have, which I have also shared with our moderator for today. We can say that much has been done for Kenya in terms of establishing the legal and policy frameworks for mainstreaming equality and inclusion. The Constitution of Kenya 2010 provides for the general rules of international law and that any treaty or convention ratified by Kenya to form part of the laws of Kenya. And Kenya has ratified many treaties and many regional documents and instruments as far as human rights are concerned. We have ratified all the basic UN documents and all the basic African Union documents. And so happy to be part of the conversation on the 2 protocols as well, and to make sure that the special interest groups enjoy the rights therein. It is particularly important for us here in Kenya because we do not have a substantive law on older members of the society. We do have their rights set out in the Constitution, but we do not have a law on older members of society. On persons with disability, we have ratified the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disability, the 2006 one, but we also do have a law on Persons with Disability Act 2003, but which is also currently under review. And we are an active participant in the review of the Persons with Disabilities Act. But then having a protocol in our region will enhance the enjoyment of rights for persons with disability here in Kenya. So the effort is important. On the protocols, we have here in Kenya a Treaty Making and Ratification Act of 2012, which is the law that we use now in following ratification here in the country. So this Treaty Making and Ratification Act of 2012 provides the steps to be followed in initiation of a treaty ratification. And the steps are: 1, to subject the provisions of the section, subject the provisions of this section to the relevant national executive or the relevant state department, which shall initiate the treaty making process in such a manner as the cabinet secretary may determine. So the cabinet secretary for us here is the cabinet secretary in charge of labor and social protection. And he is the one who then needs to follow the steps required by the Treaty Making and Ratification Act of 2012. When deciding whether to initiate the treaty making process or not, the national executive or the relevant state department shall consider the following: the need that the new treaty is to meet, the existing legal regime, including extent of its applicability to the perceived problem, the probability of reaching the required measure of agreement and the solutions aimed for, any relevant legislative efforts related to the perceived problems, and the optical form of the proposed treaty. In compliance with these provisions, the State Department of Social Protection and the Ministry of Foreign Affairs convened the first stakeholders meetings drawn from the disability sector and the older persons on diverse dates in 2019 and 2020 to sensitize them on the provisions in the articles of the two protocols. The status of each article and the need to be met was deliberated, and the institutions responsible for implementation of each were identified. Technical teams were then constituted to go through the documents and make a report that would chart the way forward. The gaps which need to be addressed by all the stakeholders were then identified, with one glaring gap being the place of the family in the care of the elderly. I think that is still a question that we need to have, given our African culture and given how we treat our elders in African culture and African systems, and remembering that the main convention, the African Charter on Human and People's Rights, does really relate to our African traditions. I think the place of the family in the care of the elderly needs to be underscored. The other one that was very important was Article 57D of the Constitution of Kenya, that requires the state to take measures to ensure the elderly receive reasonable care from the family first and then from the state. And Article 10 of the protocol that we are discussing today requires state parties to adopt policies and legislations that provide incentives to family members who provide home care for older persons, and also to identify, promote, and strengthen traditional support systems to enhance the ability of families and communities to care for the older members of society. Our constitutional framework and the protocol are really in sync as far as the role of the family in protection of the older members of society is concerned. Our commission has actually gone further, and which is a conversation we can have on another day, to look at whether we could have daycare centers for the older members of society. But after review by the technical teams, there was a call for public participation to members of the public to submit their views on the two protocols on diverse dates. Stakeholders who had submitted their views were then invited to present, and the commission, the National Gender and Equality Commission, participated in submitting the views. The commission specifically noted some new provisions introduced in the protocol. For instance, harmful practices, which include ritual killings, albinism, youth with disability, deaf culture, and older persons with disability, among others, which are not provided for in other frameworks, including our Persons with Disability Act, and including the UN Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disability. And the Commission therefore recommended ratification of the protocols, that they would enhance the legal framework for protection of older persons and persons with disability. And we were particularly concerned by harmful killings and harmful rituals, which have been on the rise here in Kenya as far as older members of society are concerned. There are places, especially our county here called Kilifi, where older members of the society with white hair have been identified as witches, and very, very high levels of violence, meted out on them. And so the protocol is important for us in as far as it stops and it provides for matters around ritual killings and harmful practices. After the stakeholder submissions of views, the State Department of Social Protection and the Ministry of Foreign Affairs retreated to draft a cabinet memorandum, and the terms of the submissions, in terms of the submissions by the stakeholders, requesting the cabinet to approve the protocols for ratification. The commission, which is the principal organ of the state in ensuring compliance with all treaties and conventions ratified by Kenya relating to issues of equality and freedom from discrimination, relating to special interest groups, was invited to the validation meeting of the joint cabinet memo for the two protocols, and we participated in drafting of the final document. The request was then forwarded to cabinet for approval, and the good thing is that we are having this meeting at a time when the approval for ratification has been granted by cabinet. The cabinet approved the ratification, the approval. The cabinet approved ratification by Kenya on 25th February 2021 of the two protocols. And the two protocols are now ready to be forwarded to the National Assembly for consideration as per Section 8 of the Treaty Making and Ratification Act. Once the Cabinet Secretary submits the treaty, the protocols and a memorandum to the treaty making process to the Speaker of the National Assembly, the relevant parliamentary committee will ensure public participation is done and the ratification process is pursued. And I'm very happy that Honorable David Sangok is part of this conversation, because now when the matter has left cabinet, as the approval has been obtained at cabinet level, the matter is headed to Parliament, and the relevant parliamentary committee is, in our case, the committee in charge of labor and social protection, again in Parliament. The departmental committee in charge of labor and social protection, which is where Honorable David Sangok serves in. And so this matter is now headed to Parliament so that in relation to the Treaty Making and Ratification Act, Parliament can play its role. And it now remains for the stakeholders to lobby with the relevant duty bearers to ensure that the documents are introduced in Parliament, and after due process, Parliament approves the ratification. So the process has commenced, the process has started. I think really good, because it takes a long time for our documents to get out of cabinet. Luckily, this particular matter is already out of cabinet from the February of this year. And so the matter now headed to Parliament. Parliament will conduct public participation. And so I think that in terms of Kenyan processes, we are on course. We just need to accelerate our efforts at getting Parliament to approve the ratification. We are in the budget season. So as soon as the budget season is over in the month of June, I think by the month of July, we really should see a lot more progress as far as this matter is concerned. And we would be happy to lead Ghana and South Africa and the other African countries in getting our signing and getting our ratification process for the protocols going on. Thank you very much, and thank you for this conversation. We are happy and we look forward to even greater partnership. Thank you very much.
Honorable Commissioner, thank you so much for this amazing presentation. And we are beyond overjoyed to hear about the approval of the ratification that you have told us has happened so recently. And we really welcome this move by the Kenyan government to take this step in ensuring that these protocols are furthered. And I love that you had also indicated that the next stage in this process would be that this be shared then with Parliament. So we do have honorable guests in Parliament in Kenya, and I would then be asking them when they do enter the floor eventually to touch on these issues. And we thank you so much for this presentation. And also just to touch on some of our participants that are in the chat box, and just to keep our conversation lively, maybe you can tell us where you are joining from, and we really appreciate you being here. And I'd also like to welcome some key stakeholders from the government of South Africa. I'd like to recognize Maguguletu Dlamini from the Gauteng Office of the Premier, Older Persons' Rights. You are very welcome, and thank you so much for attending this event. And now I would like to hand over to the next speaker, and our next speaker today is Rosaline Kihumba, and we are very happy to have her on this call today. Rosaline has done extensive work with Help Age International, and she is currently the Portfolio Development Quality Manager, and she is from Kenya. And we would like to open up the floor for her to speak as well on the rights of older persons and basically the general context around older persons and why these two the document in relation to the older persons protocol is particularly important for the continent. I'd like to invite you to the floor. Thank you.
Thank you very much for giving Helpage and myself an opportunity to be in this very important meeting and to really appreciate every one of you in support of issues of older person. And we are quite excited that the general awareness of the older person is actually gaining momentum, and particularly so after, or during this COVID period, that it has really exposed the fact that we are actually not doing much about our older person, and they are really, we need to do something about them. We know that during this period, our older person were unable to access the major services, and we really thank most of the government who came handy to modify some of their social pension and cash transfer and food and non-food item, and specifically focusing on our older person. But we know that our governments also experience a lot of hurdles around doing this effectively, because the community system that really serves our older person because of their nature, having majority of them being in communities where they are disconnected to the community because of ageism, because we know that is continuing at a family level, at a community level, and also in our policy level, that for sure our older person are not in the system, even in the family level. So it's something that we really need to understand and bring it to the higher level, and especially in terms of us ensuring that they are more involved than before, and our issues are actually we are making sure that they are part and parcel of what we are doing. But just to dive in our usual context about our older person, we know that our older person are increasing in number, but also not just that, it's because also they are living longer. But doubling with that, they are also living longer when they have much more capacity than before, because of the continuous improvement of our system around education, but also our health system. So they are getting into old age and they are staying longer. We know that the work around HIV, we have done very well in providing ART, ARV, and so our older person, we are getting people entering into old age while they have HIV, but also they have adequate ARV access, so they can live longer. And not just that, we know that also because our system is not ready for that, then it means that we are also operating in an environment where our laws around education is not favoring our older person to continue being reskilled and remain independent human beings who are capable of continuous contribution, or ensuring that our society and families continue benefiting in their potential and talents. That is what we are missing. And we know that, again, our older person, as we age, we also continue being frail. And this system around ensuring that we have long-term care system and palliative care system in our communities, and also where necessary for institutionalization, that has not been systematically envisioned within our legal and policy frameworks, including programs and system. So that's where issues are arising, and making sure that we are not actually providing enough data to actually understand what is the situation of our older person in terms of their vulnerability, but also in terms of their capacity and contribution in society. And I can just give you, because of time, give you an example of how much our older person continue in terms of unpaid care work, issues around contribution around voluntarism, contribution around agriculture, because we know for sure average farmer in Africa is over 60 and above. And that is a huge contribution to our continent. But let me now go back to where we are in terms of our protocol. We know that the protocol for older person was actually adopted in 2016 in January. That is almost, almost 4 to 6 years now. And we know that the discussion around human rights began way before during Vienna Convention, way behind, quite a long time ago. And we know in Africa, we know that our member states also adopted the African Charter for the African Charter, which stipulates our mandate around human rights. And it was very clear that our older person were also mentioned, and our member states also committed around making sure that we have a special protocol that we now have. So it's our member states had already agreed that they want to protect the rights of older person, but it seems like it's taking longer, and for sure our member states have a heart to really move forward in ensuring that the human rights of our older person have been respected and protected, and that's why they put this framework in place. And so far we have only let's say 2 who have ratified, that is Lesotho, Benin, and we know that Rwanda and Ethiopia have finished all the internal process at country level, but they have not deposited the instrument with our legal office in Addis. And to date, we have 17 countries who have signed. And just to mention a few, we have Mozambique, Mali, Gabon, and Cameroon. So they are there, and we are happy that for sure Ghana is among those, and we appreciate. And we know, just like we have mentioned, is that quite a number of countries are making good progress. We have Kenya, we have Uganda, we have South Sudan, we have South Africa, Namibia, and Liberia, Eswatini, and I know they have even roadmaps that are there. But we quite do not understand why it is taking longer, and it can be explained in a number of ways. One is the issues around the ability for our governments to be able to understand that the commitment that have been placed within the protocol, we shouldn't be realized at in 1 year. It's something that we can do progressively, because most countries are scared on the financial implication of implementing the protocol. And this is somewhere maybe the research institution and the human rights institution can come on board to really support in justifying and lobbying the member states to ensure that they do really understand it's something that should be implemented progressively. But also because we have not galvanized enough political will so that our politicians, and I know increasingly now we are seeing our members of parliament, I know in Kenya, in Nigeria, they have taken a forefront to actually champion in terms of putting private member bills on the table, and we do really appreciate. But this needs to be seen in every country, so that we don't just look at our older person as an issue of welfare, but a right, and they need to be mainstreamed within our public policy arena. And there are issues around ageism, not just within our politicians, but also our policy makers, our community. And this is really making sure or stagnating any progress that we can make in elevating. There are issues around our governments wanting to sort every system within a country for them to be able to ratify. And it is not a shame if nothing has been done, but if we can sign and ratify and begin the work, that can be so good, so that we just start from where we are. And we know that the conversation around older person still remains low. There is no sustained, deliberate conversation at a national level and even at a regional level. And this could be explained by the fact that, for instance, the number of NGOs working in the area is also small. Looking at the number of staff at government level or even UN level who are engaged on the sector are small. Even the research institution in the area are also quite small, meaning that also the competence is still quite low. And it's an area that we can champion, especially working closely with the human rights institution and the academia. If we can be able to bring, relevant training courses, modules, awareness programs to our policymakers, our members of parliament, and in a sustained way, also our governments have, even our donors have also put very little money on this sector, and it's something that we may need to look at. And issues around data, again, we are unable to profile and pitch the issues of older person because of data, and that's why they keep on missing in the various sector planning. And we know that Ghana, South Africa are really doing well in this area, and it's an area they could really champion for us, so that we can have a shared life, really bring these issues of older people or the ratification process to go faster. And we know at a national level, beside the lack of a consistent conversation, there is also lack of the voice of older person. There is also lack of a coordinated mechanism that is championed through partnership with a diverse organization. But just to conclude, is that this protocol really is a critical document, and I would urge every member state to ratify and sign, because actually now it really clarifies the state's obligations, and it gives us a frame to actually establish an accountability mechanism, so that we can ensure that our older person are the right holders, and ensure that we prohibit all forms of discrimination against the older person. With that, I really thank you all for listening and for giving me this opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that contribution, Rosaline, and thank you so much for the support that you've shown the center over the years. And we particularly love how you touched on the vulnerabilities that are being faced by older persons, particularly around unpaid care work and in relation to the agriculture industry. So we thank you so much, along with the many other issues that you touched on. We found it incredibly informative. And just to also note with interest that we have a new development in the sphere of older persons, in that we did see in April 2021 the ratification of Malawi of the Protocol on the Rights of Older Persons. And with that, we have invited Chief State Advocate Pacharo Kaira, who is from the Ministry of Justice and Constitutional Affairs in the Republic of Malawi, basically to share experiences around the journey of Malawi in ratifying the Protocol on the Rights of Older Persons, but also because this is an intersectional meeting between older persons and disability rights. We also wanted to find out if you could maybe share with us if there's been any progress that has been made by Malawi in relation to the signing of the protocol for persons with disability. And we do recognize that we have a jam-packed program. So unfortunately, I'm going to have to ask if you could just make your points as succinct as possible. And if you can just share within 5 minutes your experience, we would really appreciate that. Thank you very much. And the floor is yours, sir.
Okay, thank you very much. I hope I'm clear enough.
You are, thank you so much.
Yeah, lovely. Okay, 5 minutes is not a lot of time to share a lot of issues, but thank you. And we are pleased to be part of this session, and good to see colleagues once again. Malawi's experience in the ratification of the Protocol on Older Persons. I'll start by saying essentially the ratification process in Malawi is executive driven. It starts with the executive. The powers are with the executive as far as our constitution is concerned. Parliament is really not involved. Parliament is barely or just basically informed of the ratification at the end. And this is normally through the relevant committees like the Committee on International Relations or any relevant committee. In this case, a ratification of an instrument on older persons, the relevant committee would be the Social Welfare Committee. So that's how it happens. It starts with the executive, the presidents, and the relevant ministries. Now, in terms of our experience for this protocol, I would share 3 points on how this was done. And number 1, political will. Number 2, coordination. And number 3, consultations. Firstly, on political will, I think it's important for there to be political will for any ratification. So you need people who are looking at the various instruments that your country would want to ratify. So in our case, we have like my section, the Human Rights section, the Ministry of Justice, coordinates state-party reporting, which means that most of the time we are looking at not only state-party reporting, we're looking at the recommendations we're getting, we're looking at instruments that we need to ratify. So we have to coordinate with others and then engage the relevant ministers for us to do the ratification. So for us, what has worked very well for this protocol, if you've been following the politics in Malawi, you will notice that 1, we have had a new government in the past year, and it has opened a great opportunity as far as human rights is concerned. So that has been a plus for us. We are pushing in a lot of issues related to human rights, and they have been welcomed very well. So in terms of ratification, we have a whole list of instruments which we are hoping to push through very quickly, and this one was the first. And next will be the disabilities protocol. We also became a member of the Human Rights Council this year. So it's like all those things have worked together to amplify the political will as far as Malawi is concerned. Number 2, on coordination at various levels, at the institutional level, at the legal and policy level, as well as the other initiatives level. So at the institutional level, we have the Minister of Justice, Minister of Foreign Affairs, And then the relevant minister as far as the issues of older persons is concerned. And in this case, it's the Minister of Gender, Children, and Disability and Social Welfare. So these 4 ministries, that's 3, Foreign Affairs, Justice, and Minister of Gender. These 3 ministries have worked together and had a coordinated approach to this ratification. And in addition to these ministries, we added a civil society organization called MANEPO. This one is an umbrella civil society organization for issues or rights to do with older persons. So we worked together and we gave each other assignments, and it was pretty neat and straightforward. On the legal and policy coordination level, our constitution, I'm sure most constitutions in Africa have provisions on equality, non-discrimination, either on older persons or persons with disabilities. So we viewed this ratification as just building on what is already in the constitution. It was also building on the policies which we have on older persons. We have a policy on older persons, and we thought that this would go a long way to build on that already. And the plan is already there for us to have a standalone legislation on older persons. So it was thought that this would build up and coordinate well with already which we have as far as legal and policy framework is concerned. Other initiatives here, I'm thinking of the Universal Periodic Review, which Malawi underwent last year in November 2020 at the Human Rights Council. There we pledged that we would ratify all those outstanding instruments. So that also just built into the coordination mechanism. Number 3, consultation, and this is my last point. On consultation, we had to speak to all the key players. And thankfully, we already have a platform for consultations because we have a national task force on the African Charter and Maputo Protocol. We use that platform or that task force as a platform to discuss human rights issues in Africa. So we use that as well to discuss ratification of instruments and to do consultation. And with the COVID, our consultations were largely virtual. We had one meeting, face-to-face meeting in the capital, but the rest was virtual, where we would send questionnaires, where we would have Zoom meetings. And in the end, we reached a consensus and we pushed through the process of ratification. In terms of the disabilities protocol, the processes have already started. Actually, this morning, I was on a call with our colleagues at Foreign Affairs just to review where we are. We are just remaining with 1 or 2, I think 1 session, consultation session, but we'll be pushing through this ratification also very, very soon. I think within the next 2-3 months, we'll have it. So briefly, that's what I can say in terms of Malawi's shared experience as far as the ratification of the older persons protocol is concerned. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir, for sharing your experience and your insight around what Malawi has been doing in relation to the Older Persons Protocol, and also the notable progress that is being made in relation to the protocol on the rights of persons with disabilities in Africa. And I just love how you were able to capture some of the things or the ingredients that are needed for states in considering going down this path, because you talked about political will, you talked about coordination, and you talked about consultation. So I think as we have different countries on this call, we love that they take heed of some of the advice that you've given in going down this journey. So thank you so much for sharing this experience. And now I would like to take us to our next speaker, who is Esther Jimfi, and she is the Executive Secretary for the National Council for Persons with Disabilities in Ghana. And again, just to note that we're under time constraints, and Mr. Kaira has done a great job of passing on the baton and keeping his points very succinct. So we ask the next speaker to do the same. But as you know, we are on social media, and this is being live streamed on social media. We're on Facebook, on the Center for Human Rights page, and the Center for Human Rights is also on Twitter. This is also where the feed is. It's also on Instagram and LinkedIn. So we'd ask that you share and that you follow the Center for Human Rights page on all of these platforms, and don't forget to use our hashtag #Ratify. Thank you so much, and on to the next speaker for the floor.
Good morning, and thank you so much for this opportunity. I'm the Executive Secretary for National Council on Persons with Disability, and in Ghana, that is the State Agency for Disability Matters. Actually, I was not expecting to address this August meeting, but once I have this opportunity, I will use it. Thank you. Ghana has also ratified the UN Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, in addition to other international treaties in order to secure the human rights of persons with disabilities and then the older persons as well. We have ratified the Marrakesh Treaty as well. And then with the UN Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disability, Ghana has actually submitted its initial report, awaiting to be reviewed. Now, with respect to the protocol for the African disability, I'm happy to say that we have a very strong civil society organizations led by Ghana Federation of Disability Organizations. They have started stimulating the waters and calling for ratification. They made a petition, a special petition last year to the Honorable Minister for Gender, Children, and Social Protection, and also to the Council to ratify. And I would like to say, well done to Kenya for making this great strides. I take it like Kenya has actually shared great experience and then good practice, and Ghana, we hope to follow. Currently, we are reviewing, Ghana has the Persons with Disability Act, which came into force before the UN Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disability. So in line with the obligation under the UN Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disability, Ghana is currently reviewing our persons with disability rights in consultation with all key stakeholders, especially with government entities, organizations of persons with disabilities. So we will look at the good example from Kenya, and we will move on to take the necessary steps to ensure that Ghana ratifies the African Protocol on Disability Rights. Thank you very much for this opportunity.
Thank you so much for your contributions, and thank you so much for just touching base with us on how on Ghana and the context in Ghana. And also you did raise a very key point that from this meeting, we've already learned some of the really good best practices you did say from Kenya and also from Malawi. So it's something that we can all follow a suit from. And now I would also now like to invite our next speaker, who is Mr. A.K. Dube. And Mr. A.K. Dube is the Chief Executive Officer for Africa Disability Alliance, and he is from the host country, South Africa. So Mr. Dube, we welcome you to the floor, and thank you so much for gracing this occasion. And once again, time constraints, but we will work with what we have, and we thank you.
Thank you very much for inviting me to this session. And I want to thank Professor Viljoen and the Center for being with us throughout the process of developing, of research, developing, and advocating for the adoption of the protocol. So since you said time is of essence, I will quickly go and mention a few important points. Number one, the AUC adopted the protocol on 29th January 2018. And then they sent a note verbal to all countries for them to now start signing and ratifying the protocol. And concurrently, the AU also invited civil society organizations, the Africa Disability Alliance among them, and all of you to now start campaigning for the ratification of the protocol. As we have heard, and I'm very happy to hear that Kenya is at an advanced stage, because we were actually thinking when we developed this protocol that Ghana would be the first to ratify. I'll get there and I'll say a bit more on that point. But I'm pleased to learn that in Ghana also there is a willingness to proceed with ratification. So when the protocol is ratified, it must then be delivered to the AU legal department. Just to mention also before I go to one or two slides that I thought might be helpful, upon adoption of the protocol by the African Union Commission, the Pan-Africa Parliament then started the process of developing the Africa Model Disability Law. Now, this law is closely related to the protocol, and it is there to assist African countries to domesticate the protocol. This law was adopted by the Pan-Africa Parliament on 19th of October, 2019. Now, we are dealing with two themes today, and the themes that we are dealing with is that of persons with disabilities and older persons. Now, I'm not sure whether you can see my screen. You will notice that Article 30 of the protocol talks about older persons. It was an agreement between persons with disabilities and older persons that we would put each other in each other's protocols. That's why Article 30 was put there. Then another point to mention is that when we ratify the protocol, we should be using articles that start from Article 37, 38, and we strongly recommend that countries should not use Article 39. In other words, reservations. If we develop the protocol together, why have reservations? And then Article 40 deals with a depository, and I'll show you now of what has since happened. So then what can we do together to try and promote the ratification of the protocol? So you can all campaign like we are doing now. You can popularize the protocol in your local languages. And I want to thank the African Network of Persons with Down Syndrome. Their chapter in Zimbabwe translated the protocol to the Shona language. We also have a copy in Swahili. So you can develop partnerships and do joint advocacy like we are doing. We can already start developing joint programs and strategies for implementation once the protocol is adopted and ratified by the states. So the government must sign, or the country must sign, and then deliver the instruments to the AU. So the question is, what opportunities do we have? We have opportunities for developing joint programs. We have opportunities for influencing local, regional, and international development cooperation. We have an opportunity to design and implement courses that relate to the protocol. We also have the opportunity of working with the African Union to develop a monitoring and evaluation framework for the protocol. Capacity building programs, not just for persons with disability, but for governments themselves, the AU organs, the legislative sectors at all levels. Now remember, they must now provide oversight on this protocol. The judiciary, including the African Court, regional, continental level structures. These are the people that whose capacity must now be enhanced in order to ensure that there is effective implementation. And even more important, we now need to call all development partners to come to the table. I have to say, in my work, I have seen development partners that seem to have a negative attitude towards African policy instruments. And they say, if it's not the UN Convention, then we are not involved because we promote UN policy instruments. So we have a lot of work on our hands to make sure that we encourage development cooperation partners to come to the table. Good news. As you can see from this picture, Mali is the first country to ratify the Africa Disability Protocol. Now, there were debates about whether that flag is for Mali or not, but that has since been clarified. You can see Mr. Kesaman standing there with the ambassador of Mali at the AUC, where they were depositing the ratification instruments. We are very proud of Mali. Despite what they are going through, as you know, there is a war. The president and the prime minister were hijacked. God knows what happened last weekend. But despite all of those problems, they prioritized disability. We want to congratulate Mali and to encourage, particularly South Africa, Kenya, and Ghana, to quickly move now towards ratification so that we can be able to work with you. I want to thank you very much, and there are some websites that people can go and see some stories about the protocol and the programs around it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Dube, for touching on very interesting key insight, particularly around the alliance that has been made between persons supporting the rights of older persons and persons supporting the rights of persons with disability. It's a really great synergy to hear about. And I also love that you talked about the translation of these protocols into local languages so that they are accessible. And you did also note or highlight the fact that Mali has ratified, has signed the protocol on persons with disability in Africa. And indeed, that is notable. And now I'd like to just call on the next speaker. Who we have on the program is the Executive Director for the African Union of the Blind from Mozambique. And I just wanted to call on them to find out if they are on this call. Do we have any confirmation from a representative from the African Union of the Blind? In that case, then I will like. Oh.
Hello.
Thank you.
Sorry, I am not the Executive Director of the African Union of the Blind. I am the Program Officer, Human Rights and Advocacy. Unfortunately, the director could not make it today. But I would just want to make a few remarks on the process or the issues pertaining to the ratification of the Africa Disability Protocol by African governments. So firstly, I would like to indicate that the African Union of the Blind, which is an intercontinental organization of organizations of blind people, is together with other partners been working from the beginning of the process of coming up with this protocol to the present, where we are encouraging African governments to ratify the Africa Disability Protocol. Most of the things that Mr. Dube said would have been part of my presentation, so I could say he took a lot of thunder out of my lightning. But I wish to highlight one of the most important thing which I think as the members of the civic society and other human rights advocates, we must always pay particular attention to. The question really in many places is, why ratify the Africa Disability Protocol when there is the United Nations Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities? If you were to go to especially dualist countries which have the process of ratification and then domestication, you would find that most of them are saying we have not even domesticated the United Nations Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. So why the Disability Protocol, Africa Disability Protocol? So I think it should be incumbent upon you know, all of us to be able to persuasively indicate that there are some things that are peculiar to Africa, which are in this protocol, which you may not find being given prominence in the convention. For instance, issues of HIV and AIDS, issues of the rights of persons with albinism, issues of early marriages, and issues of the intersectionality between the rights of persons with disabilities and those of elderly people. So I think it is important to develop advocacy messages that are persuasive to African governments to be able to embrace this idea of ratifying this Africa Disability Protocol. In any case, it is Africa where we have this cliche of African solutions to African problems. So I think the protocol is one typical example of an African solution which is trying to address African problems. And it is important for us to continue to urge governments to ratify and implement the Africa Disability Protocol. I had not said my name. My name is Abraham Mateta. And with those words, I would like to thank you very much, Madam Moderator.
Thank you so much for your contribution. And I know I gave you a very short timeline, but I'm so glad that you were able to share on behalf of the African Union of the Blind. So thank you so much. And now I'd like to introduce the next speaker. But before I do that, remember to like the page for the Center for Human Rights on all of the social media platforms. That's Facebook, that's Twitter. You'll also see on YouTube that there's a channel for the Center for Human Rights. And share. We want to get the message out on these two critical proclamations and the ratification of them. And also just to acknowledge the presence of Henry Wanyoke Foundation. And Henry Wanyoke was one of the most renowned blind marathoners and has won a considerable amount of accolades and gold medals. So we'd just like to appreciate their presence on this call. And now, without further ado, I'd like to invite Rita Kusi, who will be sharing around the rights of persons with disabilities, and she is the she's the executive director for Ghana Federation of Disability Organizations. So we'd like to just invite her to the floor.
Thank you very much, and I want to thank the organizers of this event for the opportunity given us to present. As earlier said by other speakers, Ghana has a good legal and policy regime with its passage of the Disability Act, the ratification of the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, and the adoption of other national policies on disability. But as it's been acknowledged, Ghana is yet to sign or ratify the protocols on disability. From 2018, when the African Disability Protocol was adopted by AU, the disability movement in Ghana has done some advocacy to get our government to ratify the protocol. So broadly, we've come to a point that we all need to come together to have a better appreciation as stakeholders to support the ratification. There are many priority issues for advocacy, but it is important that we get back to the table to prioritize the ratification of the protocol by our government. And this should be informed by the knowledge of the implications of the ratification of the protocol on our Disability Act review. As Esther said in her presentation, Ghana is in the process of reviewing its domestic act, the Disability Act, to be compliant with the convention. However, it is also important for us to understand that the ratification sooner or later of the protocol will have or will call on our government to review its existing laws or domestic laws to be compliant with the protocol. And so at this stage, when we have put the review of the act as a priority, it is important for us as stakeholders to sit around the table and get back to the list of issues to ensure that we also prioritize the ratification of the protocol. It is clear that, many issues are coming up today, and some of those issues we have acknowledged that we need to ensure that there is increased awareness among DPOs as stakeholders and among persons with disabilities and other strategic members of the public to support the advocacy. There seems to be some knowledge gap, and as Abraham mentioned, the knowledge gap, the key message to influence the advocacy, it's something we need to work at seriously. Currently in Ghana, I cannot say much about how far government has gone with the COVID and other issues. The advocacy went low a bit. We are getting back to it. There is a committee that is looking at the protocol, and we think that we as DPOs, as disabled people organizations and our stakeholders are committed to prioritizing the advocacy for the ratification. We're going to call on our government to take action so that we can move on with its implementation, because many issues or some issues are critical in the protocol for the betterment of the lives of persons with disabilities in Ghana. On this note, I want to thank you for the opportunity. Bye.
Thank you so much for your contribution, Rita. We really appreciate it. And also, it seems like it is a great day in terms of news around ratification and progress that's being made. We note in the chat a key contribution that has been made by Benny Palima. I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly. And this is a representative from the Presidency of the Republic of South Africa Department for Women, Youth, and Persons with Disabilities, who has informed us about the fact that ratification has been approved of the protocol. And I believe it is the protocol on the rights of persons with disabilities, but perhaps this will be also clarified later during the plenary session. But we thank you and we recognize this amazing move and contribution by the government of South Africa to do this. And with that, I would now like to mark us or cross us over to the parliamentary or rather plenary session of our discussions today. So we have key stakeholder inputs, and we have written in the program the key people that we'd like to contribute to this conversation. And we'd like to call on, firstly, Honorable David Ole Sankok. And Honorable Dr. Sankok is a senator of the Parliament of Kenya and a renowned activist around the rights of persons with disabilities. He was also a former student leader at the University of Nairobi. So I would like to humbly invite Honorable to the floor. And the floor is yours, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Madam Moderator, for that very elaborate introduction. I am actually a member of the National Assembly in Kenya. And yes, I was the former chairman, National Council for Persons with Disability in Kenya, and also the only ever chairman of the student organization of Nairobi University. Thank you very much. And I would like, first of all, to take you through that Kenya is actually a step forward in terms of disability rights, in which our own president have come out as an advocate for disability rights. In 2016, he recognized me during our Heroes Day as a hero, not because we fought for independence as persons with disability, but because there's a lot of challenges that we overcome as persons with disability to reach whichever level that we have reached. So he recognized me on behalf of the 6.5 million Kenyans with disabilities. Kenya also ratified the United Nations Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disability in 2008. And we are looking forward to ratify the African Disability Protocol, which of course now is out of cabinet, and we are sure we will fast track it so that by, as Honorable Priscilla said, and I'm sure when Honorable Dr. Isaac Mwaura will also present, I'm sure we will be able to follow it up so that by this year, July, August, we are somewhere and we can report some progress. Kenya will really like to ratify this protocol, not for the basis of putting it on paper, but also making sure that we do implement. Because ratification is another thing, and domesticating and implementing it are two different things. For us, in terms of the protocol, we really are interested with Article 5, which is on non-discrimination, and Article 7, which is on the right to health, because they are very important as far as Kenya is concerned, because we find that we still lag behind in terms of right to health with persons with disabilities. You find a person with disability, especially a woman with disability, getting pregnant. When they go to see doctors, they are asked, how did you get pregnant? Who is this beast that made you pregnant? As if they are not human beings who are also able to get pregnant like any other person. We are also interested with Article 8 of the right to life, because in Kenya, we'll find that there is ritual killing, especially in our neighboring countries. And that is why we moved our person with albinism inland, so that they are actually in the middle of our country, Some of them were transferred from where they were working stations to working station within our country, and some we were able to economically empower them to open businesses away from the borders where ritual killings is practiced. We are also interested with this right to life, Article 8, because of traditionally we are a nomadic pastoral society where sometimes personal disability are viewed as an added burden when moving livestock from one area to another in search of pasture and water, so they are killed at birth. But I'm sure we have made some progress there. Article 14 and Article 16, right to live in a community. In our own setup, we have really improved on that. We as Kenya, don't institutionalize person with disability. Instead, we make sure that they live in the community. Right to education, we make sure that they are mostly integrated system of education where person with disabilities start interacting with their fellow other pupils without disability at an early age, so that they can actually know how to complement each other. Again, this one will raise the self-esteem of a person with disability, because if yes, we cannot run in the field, but we can be number one in class, then within classes that are with people without disability, then our self-esteem will come up that I cannot win in the field, but I can win in classroom, and that is, they will concentrate on education. Article 15 on the right to accessibility. In Kenya, we are a step forward because we have a unit in the training of architects, engineers in accessibility, so that we internalize the issue of accessibility, because we know in Africa, accessibility have been an issue because transport system, for instance, is in the private sector. Our buildings, most of them, built environment is in the private sector, and we are balancing, scaring away investors and also implementing some of these protocols that we have ratified. So for us, we have decided to internalize in the training of architects and engineers. All our ministries, departments, and agencies of government have what we call performance contracting indicator, in which accessibility is one of the indicator that they will have to have marks, to be awarded marks because of accessibility and disability mainstreaming. Article 19, right to work, is also a very key article that we need to really rectify this protocol so that we can implement it. We also, as a regional bloc, East African Council for Persons with Disability, we have Article 120C of our East African Community Constitution, which also talk of the issues of persons with disability. So literally, just to sum it up, as persons with disability in the country, we have what we call representation of persons with disability in Kenya, where I sit in the National Assembly and I'm physically disabled. Honorable Senator Isaac Maora, Dr. Isaac Maora, sit in the Senate, who is also a person with albinism. And also we have independent commission like the Commission on Administrative Justice, where we have Washington Opio, who is also deaf. We also have somebody sitting in the National Gender Equality Commission, another independent commission, Dr. Chomba, who is blind. So even within us, as persons with disability, we have tried to balance the categories of persons with disability so that no one is left behind. So as we ratify these protocols, let us follow up with our government so that we can implement. In Kenya, also, we don't pay taxes as persons with disability, so that the taxes are used to buy assistive devices. So as much as we want to rectify the protocols, let us also push our governments so that we make the lives of persons with disability as easy as possible and as comfortable as possible. For instance, in Kenya, we recognize that persons with disability need vehicles, not as luxury, but sometimes because they cannot move from point A to point B because of our terrain using wheelchairs. So persons with disability in Kenya import vehicles duty-free. There are a lot of things that we have done, and even persons with disability are encouraged to do business. We have what we call ACPO, access to government procurement opportunities by persons with disability, specifically a certain percentage of all government tenders set aside for persons with disability to economically empower them and also to make them believe in their ability beyond disability and be able to also work as any other person. So thank you very much, Madam Moderator. Kenya, we are proud that we are ahead, but we are not yet there. We will do what is humanly possible to be able to make our brothers and sisters with disability, of which I am one of them, as comfortable as possible. Thank you.
Hi, good day, sir, and thank you so much for your contribution. And I learned something new, which is that persons with disabilities don't pay taxes in Kenya. So I consider myself very enlightened this morning. Oh, I see. Okay. Yes. Thank you so much. And also just to congratulate Kenya on the progress that has been made. And as you rightly said, that you'll be taking this forward to do everything humanly possible, to put it in your words, to ensure that this process is taken to its final stages. So we thank you for that, in line with what Commissioner Nyokabi had mentioned to us earlier in the morning. So now I would like to note a slight change to our program. Next, after Honorable Dr. Sankok, we're supposed to have Honorable Isaac Mwaura, but unfortunately he is not on our call. So as a change, I would like to invite Benny Palima from the Presidency of the Republic of South Africa, Department of Women, Youth, and Persons with Disability, just to share on this amazing bit of progress that has been shared in the chat box. And also, because this is a plenary session, I'd like to invite anyone who might have comments to just share them in the chat box so that we can also share them with the speakers. And if you have a question, you can put the speaker that you would like to direct the question to. And with that, I open the floor to Benny. And if I could just cut you short to give your sharing as 5 minutes long, that would be great. So I invite you to the floor, and thank you so much for your contribution.
Thank you very much, Chairperson, and all protocols observed. I would just like to announce that the President of South Africa has made a commitment in terms of the ratification of the protocol. And this he made in the State of the Nation address in 2019 in Parliament. And he said, and I quote him, "We are insisting that the next medium-term strategic framework for 2020 to 2025 should mainstream disability across all government departments and also end programs. This should be accompanied by an integrated information system that is able to track performance against targets, and also every state organ should be able to report to substantively on the inclusion of persons with disabilities within their respective mandates as prescribed. We are working towards a renewed energy with vigor and commitment to ensure that persons with disabilities are a part of a cohesive society. Now, here the President was actually announcing the intention to ratify the protocol. And in 2019, April, South Africa signed the protocol, and we were the third country to sign the protocol. And then it was deposited in Addis Ababa. The developments have been that after a wide consultation with the Presidential Working Group and the President on the 3rd of December last year, the President decided that the protocol should be ratified. So what he has done is that in the last few months, we have been working towards a cabinet process in South Africa to ratify. On the 16th of March, we presented the first ratification instrument to cabinet, which cabinet has approved as part of the program that must be ratified. On the 21st of April, 2021, Cabinet decided to ratify the protocol, and it is now going to go through Parliament system, where Parliament, the Speaker of Parliament, and the National Council of Provinces and the National Assembly will then confirm the ratification, and we will certainly deposit it in Addis Ababa. I must say that South Africa is committed to including this ratification within its domestication process through developing a Disability Rights Act, which we intend finishing as soon as possible. So therefore, the ratification will go with the AU protocol as it stands. So as I've said, colleagues and everyone else, this has been to Cabinet twice. The reason it had to go for the second time, Chairperson, was that the President wanted to make absolutely sure that it goes through his program before anything else. So therefore, all the ministers have agreed. Financial implications, all government departments are now obliged to pay for every single service that is provided for persons with disabilities. And that has been ratified by the President as part of the ratification instrument for the protocol. Secondly, it is now compulsory for diplomatic relations to continue in terms of practices of ratification, and also how do we follow the protocol. Now, it is going to be turned into a domestic law of general application to be enforced by our courts in South Africa. The presidency, therefore, is committed to also assist other countries where there is a difficulty in terms of this process of ratification. It took us a bit of time, Chair, I must say, since the signing, but we had to rush the process because the President was now saying, no, if you don't ratify this protocol, then you don't belong to my office. Therefore, I had to rush the process. But it was not a rush process. It was a properly done process. And I must say that the sector, the disability sector, is part of this process. And that K. Dube was also part of our presidential working group, assisting us with the processes. And ultimately, we are heading for Parliament. As I speak right now, the letter to the Speaker of Parliament is being prepared. The ratification instrument is finalized. Legal opinions have been obtained, and International Relations and Cooperation Department is ready to actually move with the system. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you so much for this contribution. It is really great news. It seems that we started this meeting on a really great note, and we're sailing right through in terms of great news that we're hearing. And I remember our state chief advocate from Malawi had talked about the fact that there needs to be political will, coordination, and consultation. And I think we've seen this specifically in relation to South Africa and the protocol on older persons. So we'd like to really thank, and even thank you is not enough to cover it, or express our gratitude around the personal interest that the President of South Africa has taken in pushing for the ratification process to go forward. And we really note the progress that has been made in this regard, and also the key linkage that you had made with Mr. Dube, who had also spoken earlier. So with that, thank you so much. And we'd like to now hand over to our next speaker, who is Jackson Agufana. And just to note that we're making good progress with our program, and we're nearing the end. And if you have any comments or if you have any questions, please leave them in the chat box for us, and share once again with the hashtags, #RatifyADP, and ratify the Older Persons Protocol. And if you could just engage with us on all of the channels that the Center for Human Rights has, we would greatly appreciate that. And now on to the next speaker, Mr. Agufana. The floor is yours. Hi, Mr. Agufana. If you can hear us, you may be muted. So maybe if you could unmute yourself, that would be great. Thank you.
My brother, unmute. Just unmute.
Yes. Hi, Mr. Agufana. I can see that you've unmuted, but it might be a network problem. Maybe see if you can unmute and mute again. Okay. Mr. Agufana, if you're wearing earphones, perhaps that is also affecting the fact that we can't hear you. You could just unplug them, and then we could move forward from there.
I hope I'm audible enough.
You are, sir. Thank you so much. The floor is yours.
Wonderful. I think I'd like to thank you for having us in this forum. Mine is very brief, is that we are a disabled persons-led organization based in Kenya and have been actively involved in the process of seeing into it that the African Disability Protocol becomes ratified in the country. I think we are alive to the fact that the government of Kenya has provided for an enabling environment that ensures that disability legislation is put in place and also implemented for, the benefits of disabled persons. We have and continue to be committed to mobilize disability networks across the country to ensure that even as now we are at the later stages, we need to see that Parliament, through the Kenya Disability Parliamentary Association, adds its voice to ensure that this protocol is ratified. So I think for the interest of time, I think we are still committed to seeing into it that once we are through with the processes of ratification, we will continue to push for domestication of this and also ensure that full implementation is realized. Thank you, Jalo.
Thank you so much for that, Mr. Agufana. We really appreciate your comments and also just touching on the key sort of progress that's being made by Kenya and pushing for that. And we wish to thank you so much for your contribution. And now I'd like to hand over to our next speaker, our second last speaker in the plenary session. We have Mr. Rudolph K., who is the National Coordinator for the Older Persons Forum in South Africa. So we'd just like to invite you to the floor, sir. Thank you very much.
Good morning, everybody. Unfortunately, I just have a problem with my camera this morning. It doesn't want to play along. So if you'll allow me, I'll unfortunately would only be able to give you audio this morning. Yes, very exciting news indeed from Mr. Benny Palima in the presidency of the Republic. And in as far as the ratification is concerned, it's very positive news, and we are over the moon about this news. And of course, the South African Constitution recognizes the importance of adhering to international laws, protocols, and treaties. It is important to note for us as the organization that specifically acts as the voice of older persons in our country, and as I've mentioned by many of the previous speakers, that ratification is of course not a magic wand. It needs to be domesticated. And in terms of South Africa, we have quite a substantial or quite a comprehensive legislative framework protecting the right of older persons and people with disability. That being said, implementation in some instances remains a challenge for many reasons. In terms of older persons and in terms of care, institutionalized and home-based care, some intervention is still needed in terms of providing adequate and dignified care, both institutionalized and home-based care. Safety and security of older persons is a very real concern for many people in our country. That includes many of the stakeholders in civil society, but also for government. Abuse of older persons, and also older persons being targeted by unscrupulous criminals, and they are seen as soft targets. These are some of just two of the areas that we really have to work on, and that further intervention is still required. Healthcare, housing, many of those things. But of course, the ratification lays the groundwork and is a step in the right direction in addressing many of those issues. And I want to thank Benny for bringing this under our attention. Of course, the Older Persons Forum in South Africa, along with the South African Human Rights Commission, will follow, make sure that this is followed through every step of the way until ratification. I'm not going to speak long in the interest of time, but thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you so much for your contribution, especially as the national coordinator for the South African Older Persons Forum. We thank you for just sharing your basically your insight around this issue. And we also note from the chat box some of the comments that are being made from our participants. We have a comment from about the username there, but it says, I have learned so much by attending this advocacy meeting. What is really important is the political will, because it is absent. We can talk and talk and nothing will happen. We from the older person sector will ensure that we get progress on the older persons protocol. Thank you so much for that addition. And we also note a sharing that was made by Mr. Dube, who says that any country that ratifies the African Disability Protocol will be awarded a sacred trophy and holy certificate of the African Disability Alliance. So that seems very interesting. He challenges us and he says the race is on. So we shall see the countries that will qualify for this award. And we also note a sharing from Bismarck, who says that Ghana, like most of the countries, have began the advocacy process with Ghana Blind Union leading it. So thank you so much for that. And we note all of these comments and we'd love you to just keep them coming as we enrich this conversation around the commitment to sign these protocols. And now I'd like to invite our last speaker for the day, and this is Oluwatomi, and she'll be basically speaking around the rights of older persons, and I'd like to invite her to the floor. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for the opportunity. I hope everyone can hear me and also maybe see my screen. I'm just going to quickly just jump into thanks the kinds of comments we have heard and the progress on the ratification has really gladdened my heart personally. The Center for Human Rights is my alma mater. So, and I've been personally involved with the promotion on the ratification. So I'm pleased to hear that some of our shouting and our efforts have not been in vain. And having said that, I want to focus my this conversation and what I'm going to say to everyone as stakeholders. So it's not, I'm not talking to just one group, I'm talking to the entirety of us as stakeholders, myself included. And I titled this short extract as "Let's Make Smart Choices." And I wanted you to think about it. How do you feel about savings, about your savings? Project this thought 20, 30 years down the line. I don't know what the average age of people who are in this conversation are, but let's say, okay, you are 20, let's say you are 40 right now. Think about your savings. Project this thought 20, 30 years down the line. Give a thought to inflation and buying power. Just think about it. So it's a pause moment. I want you to think about these things. If you're out of a paid job by 50, how long do you think your savings will last? 5 years, 10 years, 20 to 30 years? Food for thought. How many people here in this room have a pension plan they can trust to support them as they age, or even contribute to pension, depending on if you're in the informal or formal space? How many people have investments they can liquidate or assets they can assess or as they age, maybe asset income? How many people know for sure they would not have to contend with issues of disability as they age, or health issues in general? How many people can confirm with 100% certainty that they will get family support as they age? By personal experience, I can tell you it is not a given. I have been opportuned to, or not opportune, it was not an opportunity, it was so sad that I could say that even within a family as loving as mine, I had a grandmother who was terrified to go to our own house and who was always witch hunted as a witch by her children and by aunties, and for nothing, just for being old. So if your answer is positive on all these counts, then you are part of the privileged few, as 5% of workers in Africa are covered by security, social security in Africa. Largely, agricultural and domestic sectors are not covered. Older persons are the poorest in the world. Gratuity and pension centers have become debt traps in many countries. And I'm saying all this not to end this on a sad note, and it is not a scare tactic. We must rather look at the major themes that run through all the scenarios I have painted. There is uncertainty, there is fear, there's instability. And so what do we do in the face of this? What do we do to galvanize ourselves in the face of this? These are the realities that older persons face. These are the realities that we will have to contend with in 20, 40, 30 years' time. What actions do we take in the face of uncertainty? We plan. What do we do in the face of instability? We prepare and we invest in the future. When we fight for the rights of older persons or the rights of persons with disability, we are not doing them a favor. It is their human right. It is a human right. And we are only acting in our own self-interest. So I want us to see that the actions we are taking, the actions that Kenya is taking, the actions that South Africa is taking, the actions that Ghana is taking, the actions that all African countries should take, it is out of self-interest. This is where we're going to be in the next 30 years. This is what we need to plan for. This is how we need to secure our own future and the future of generations to come, by investing in policies, by investing in the right policies. So it is Investment in the protocol to the rights of older persons is a smart business decision for any government and to all of us as stakeholders. We need to promote policy interventions to promote healthy and active aging. We need to promote policies to promote that support cost-effective health and long-term care interventions. We need to promote policies that support paid and unpaid work. We need to promote policies that support acceptable, equitable, and effective funding and income transfers. We need to promote the use of innovation and technology. This event here today is only possible because we have decided to optimize the use of technology. Before COVID-19, we didn't know that we could have multiple meetings back to back, left and right, across the world together without having to pay money for tickets. These are some of the things that we can, when we are discussing the rights of older persons or the rights of persons with disability, that can come to bear. We need to put workplace interventions in place to enable older people to work longer. We need to support retirement and pension policies. We need to build on what we know and improve the evidence base for policy making. As Rosalind said, do we even have the data about where the areas in which older persons are most affected? These are conversations that we need to be having. So I'm super excited to hear all that we have to say with regards to where we are on ratification. But as the Honorable David Stancock said, ratifying these protocols is a crucial part of creating a conducive legal framework. However, side by side, we have to consider and we have to make as paramount the implementation of these laws and policies. The positive news with regards to ratification is great, but I ask us all not to sit on our achievements until it's done, until we have every state, until we have the states that are here, seated here today, having ratified the protocol, and until we have the states to begin to think and actively work on the domestication of this protocol, and until the older persons begin to enjoy some of the dividends of this, that are in the protocol. So in all, another area where I wanted to touch before I leave today is older women have the shorter end of the stick. When you talk about intersecting vulnerabilities, when we talk about older persons in general, we need to realize that we have certain groups of people, persons with disability, also older persons with disability, older women who are uniquely vulnerable. And we need to think further about strategic ways to ensure that these policies are all inclusive. Thank you so much for the opportunity that the center has given me. I'm not sure I said my name. My name is Oluwatomi Okelwo. I'm a former staff of the Center for Human Rights. However, I'm currently working for the Akinfade Foundation. Many thanks.
Susan,
Having a disability places you in the world's largest minority group. It is estimated that about 15% of the world's population, which is roughly 1 billion people, have a disability. And 80% of these people live in developing countries.
In Africa, 80 million people are estimated to be living with disabilities. Persons with disabilities face multiple challenges, right from birth, in the community, at school, and every other aspect of their life. We appreciate the development made so far in reducing the marginalization and stigmatization associated with disabilities. However, more still needs to be done. On 30th January 2018, the African Union took a monumental step in the right direction by adopting the African Disability Rights Protocol. As of May 2021, only 9 African countries have signed this protocol, and none has ratified this. We call on African states and heads of governments to speed up the ratification process so that persons with disabilities can help in developing the continent as any other Africans. African heads of state, we ask you through this medium to ratify the African Disability Rights Protocol now.
Hi, my name is Ramatulai Jalo. People with disabilities deserve love, respect, and protection. Let's not discriminate against them. And therefore, I stand with people with disabilities, and I call upon President Mokgweetsi Masisi, the President of Botswana, to ratify the African Disability Rights Protocol now.
Je suis Fazil Imigo Christian depuis les Centres des droits de l'homme de l'Université de Pretoria. Je demande qu'il plaise à son Excellence, Monsieur le Président de la République démocratique du Congo et chef de l'État et président en exercice de l'Union africaine, Félix Antoine Tshisekedi Tshilombo, de ratifier les protocoles à la Charte africaine des droits de l'homme relatifs aux droits des personnes handicapées en Afrique. Merci.
I ask President Lazarus Chakwera to ratify the African Disability Rights Protocol.
I am Robert Akutu Amafo from Ghana, and I urge His Excellency Nana Akufo-Addo, the President of Ghana, to ensure the ratification of the African Protocol on Persons with Disability before the end of his term as President.
My name is Amy Tuchten, and I call on you, President Cyril Ramaphosa, to please ratify the African Disability Rights Protocol to demonstrate a clear commitment to advancing the rights of persons with disabilities in South Africa.
Mo appelle Daphna Meuden de l'île Maurice et mo invite le président Prithviraj Rupan de ratifier le African Disability Rights Protocol.
My name is Natunga Benjamin. I be Cameroonian, and I am asking the government of Cameroon to please ratify the African Disability Rights Protocol.
Achomi Nahaja Adam Ninja Ghana. I call on the President Nana Dankwa Akufo-Addo to please ratify the African Disability Rights Protocol.
Salbonani, ibizoram ngimuzwe imphume Zimbabwe. Thando ukukhuthaza umongameli welizwe uEmmerson Mnangagwa to ratify the African Disability Rights Protocol.
I'm calling on the President Hage Geingob to ratify the African Disability Rights Protocol.
President Emmerson Mnangagwa to ratify the African Disability Rights Protocol.
Nze Brian Chibirango, Mkowola government ya Uganda to ratify the Africa Disability Rights Protocol.
Mijn naam is Liesel Miller en ek vra u, meneer President Cyril Ramaphosa, please ratify the African Disability Rights Protocol.
Je m'appelle Radouarine Sourakoto Samimanan. J'exhorte le gouvernement malgache, nommément le président de la République de Madagascar, à ratifier le protocole africain relatif aux droits des personnes en situation de handicap.
Mulishani mkwai, ninaowale tsanga ndiwaku Zambia. Haushikuwale londe fokuchita eju teko wesu, ukuchita ratify African Disability Rights Protocol. Thank you.
Sunana Abdulmalik Bello daga Nigeria. Ina kira Shugaba Muhammadu Buhari to please ratify the African Disability Rights Protocol.
Nze Lona Afermungu, Sabo Mukulembeze Yoweri Kaguta Museveni to please ratify the Africa Disability Rights Protocol.
Mimi naitwa Benedict Washira kutoka Kenya. Na nakuuliza wewe Rais Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta, tafadhali ratify the African Disability Protocol.
Disability rights are human rights, and ratifying the African Disability Protocol will give a recognition to the human rights of persons with disabilities. Inclusion matters, disability rights matter. Let us sign and ratify the African Disability Protocol.
Thank you so much for bearing with us. Firstly, I want to just apologize for the technical glitch there, but we continue. What you've seen just now is a video that has been compiled by the Disability Unit, and this is being manned by students for the Human Rights and Democratization Program in Africa. So this is the work that has been done by students in the name of promoting the ratification of the Protocol on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. And before I call on the next speaker, I'd just like to say thank you so much for attending this event. It would not be possible without the key contributions that have been made by everyone on this call today. And we just want to note the fact that this is not the last conversation that we will be having in this regard, but we look forward to having many other conversations in this regard that would be sector-based. Maybe we'll look at government in particular, CSOs in particular, academia in particular, before coming together once again. And we note with amazement and excitement, the progress that has been made, the sense of commitment that has been shown by the governments of South Africa, Ghana, and Kenya to really further the ratification of these two key protocols. So we wish to sincerely thank you. And we'd just like to state that all of the speakers on this call, we would love to be able to tap into your insight and your knowledge again in relation to your knowledge around older persons and people with disabilities. And we look forward to you joining the network of stakeholders that the Center for Human Rights will be able to call upon. And with that, I'd like to now invite our last speaker, who will be concluding for us. And once the conclusion has been done, feel free to log out as you may intend to. We do know that your schedules are jam-packed. So without further ado, I'd like to invite Mrs. Susan Mutimbasera, who is the project officer for the Women's Rights Unit, the Center for Human Rights. Thank you so much. And Susan, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Ramu. And I'm not sure that I still have any more work to do here, because I think, especially after your last statement, you have basically done the work that I'd come here to do, which is just to thank everyone so much for the time and dedication that I have seen in this meeting. I just want to acknowledge the fact that we have seen a lot of commitment from the countries that are represented here. And I want you to also understand that the fact that we brought all these three countries together, Ghana, Malawi, Ghana, Kenya, and South Africa, in order for us to learn from each other and hopefully also create networks and learn the processes that are happening in each of the countries, which is also the reason why we brought also Malawi to come and tell us about their experience with the ratification of the Older Persons Protocol. But I'm very encouraged by the commitment that I have seen in this meeting, and I have every faith that moving forward, we are all moving towards the ratification of these important protocols. And I hope that the three countries that we have today will actually be setting an example for the other so many other African countries that have not yet started the process of ratification. And like Ramu was saying, we value so much your contribution to this. And as Professor Franz indicated at the beginning, as much as we're an academic institution, we also are an NGO, so to speak, where we have projects that we are working on, and we do a lot of research and advocacy work, which we definitely would want to tap into the knowledge and skills that we have seen in this meeting, and possible partnerships as well, in order to see the protection of human rights within Africa in general, and in particular, the rights of persons with disabilities and older persons. Finally, I just want to thank the Masters in Human Rights and Democratization students who have made all of this possible. Despite the demanding schedule of the work that they already have with their studies, they have managed to set up these campaigns. And you can see from their dedication and from the energy that they have that they believe in the cause. So I just want to give them a big thank you for organizing this. And I hope that you will continue to engage with the Center for Human Rights and become part of the bigger family of the Center for Human Rights. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, everyone. And with that, that marks the end of our program. You may log out and have a great day. Thank you.